everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do 2 DIY Dollar Tree easy Valentine's Day gift ideas. One of them's way easier. We're going to use these 2 tins from the Dollar Tree, but any heart-shaped box will work. Really, any shaped box will work. You're going to use some scrapbook paper or paper. You can use construction paper, and we'll talk about that more. And then you want photos or copies of photos or prints of photos, as many as you can fit inside the box that you have. We're going to also use some scrap paper for notes, because this is going to be like a photo album with notes. And then we're going to use for the second project some roses and then a scrap piece of foam board. First one we want to do is we want to take a scrap piece of paper and we want to make a template that's going to fit inside this box. So to do that, I'm tracing the outside of the box. I'm cutting it out, folding it in half, and then making a nicer heart, making it a little smaller. As you can see, if you cut it the outside of the box, it will not fit properly on the inside, for obvious reasons. But if you fold it in half, I want to show you there, you can make it more heart shaped, and then you can go ahead and make sure that it fits inside your box. Okay, and you want to leave it with a little bit of room, because once you start adding the pictures, you don't want to make it too crowded. Okay, so cut the heart a little bit shorter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out pieces of paper, but first I need to add the tab. You want your heart to have a tab at one of its widest sides. Okay, you want to pick the widest point on your heart, and you want to tape down a little piece of tab paper. And now I'm using scrapbook paper that was gifted to me, and I want to always thank everybody who's donated supplies to the channel. I do appreciate every single solitary thing. But I decided to use this scrapbook paper that's white with silver foil. I have 5 different kinds, and I'm able to go ahead and make this in a variety of colors. What I'm doing is, if you saw me flip-flop the heart, you want to make sure you get them cut out in lefts and rights. And I've marked them on the paper, left and right. And it doesn't make a difference which ends up being the left or the right, but what makes a difference is that you have an even number of lefts and rights, because you're going to need, for each picture, you're going to need 2 hearts, plus you're going to need 2 extra hearts, one for the top and one for the bottom. Okay, because we're going to glue this scrapbook photo album into this heart-shaped box. So now you're going to repeat that with all of your hearts until you get all of them cut out. Now, we said we talk about the paper a little bit, so let's talk about the paper. If you're using actual photographs and you plan on making this sort of a family heirloom, you want to make sure you use paper that's acid-free, and you want to use glue that's acid-free, so that it stays protected. But my recommendation is to always make copies of photographs, or print out your photographs, and this way you don't have to worry so much about their, but preserving their integrity. All right. The other thing is, the Dollar Tree does have some little scrapbook papers. It won't really be as big as this heart and any of the ones that I've gotten, but if you're going to use printed out pictures, you can even use construction paper, or you can use the colored folders. Any of those things would work. I actually like this scrapbook paper. It's a little bit thicker, more onto like a cover stock sort of weight. It's not quite as heavy as cardstock, but it's a little bit lighter than that, and they call it cover stock. So you want to make sure that you get all of your hearts cut out, and again, you want to have 2, one left and one right, per picture, and then 2 extra at the end. All right. We're also going to work on cutting out frames or attaching pictures, and you may need a straight edge or template, or if you guys have a shaped hole punch cutter, that might be something that I want to do too. Now, you can always cut this on your Cricut. I'm sure that there's a template out there. If you have a heart shape template on your Cricut and you cut these all out on your Cricut, you can always add the tabs after. For the very last one, I'm going to show you how. We're going to cut the tab off on accident, and we're going to just use and create a tab at the very, very end with a little scrap piece of paper. Okay. So now I'm matching up the front and back of the. Basically, I'm making the pages, and I'm making my line up, and you can see that what I'm trying to do for me is I'm trying to take matching patterns. So imagine if you're opening it like a book. the left side and the right side would have the same print. And then you want to make sure that you have the tabs on the same side when they're facing right sides together. Hopefully that makes sense. And let me think. Yeah, okay. Oh, and I'm using hot glue because everybody pretty much has hot glue. You can use other glues. Again, if you're using photo preserved, if you're trying to preserve photos, you want to make sure you use acid-free adhesives, any photo tack, double-sided tape, or glue stick that you want to use. Make sure that it's photosensitive. Otherwise, I'm just using hot glue because like everybody has it. If you decide to use tacky glue, then you want to make sure you give this plenty of time to dry before you put it inside the tin. Now for this, I've added a ribbon on so it looks a little bit more like a gift. This was just my personal preference. This ribbon is from the Dollar General. I didn't find any white color ribbon when I went to the Dollar Tree this Valentine's Day, or this Valentine's season. So I picked this up from the Dollar General for $1, and I created a bow, and I'm just gluing it onto the top just to make it look a little bit more like a gift. You want to make sure you glue it on the insides of the sides so that when you put the lid on, you don't actually end up pulling the ribbon off, or you don't prevent yourself from closing the lid. Now, we stopped in the middle of what we were doing to do this now because we have to glue this ribbon down before we glue the paper down. Okay? So I'll show you there. So it's all hidden nice by the paper. So I've marked that paper as the top, so I know where I'm going to start. All right, so now I'm taking my template again, and I'm going to create a heart frame. I cut about 3/4 of an inch around the exact same shape as the heart that we drew, and now I'm using that as like a frame. So for the first one, I want to show you how we're going to use that frame to frame out the picture. We're going to cut off all the excess, okay? And then we're going to take that frame and we're going to cut out our paper. I'm actually showing you here how to tape the picture on, but we're not taping the picture on to the scrap that we're cutting out. So let's cut the frame out first. So I'm laying the piece of the heart right on to the scrapbook paper that I'm using, and I'm going to cut out a frame. I'm going to show you different techniques of if you're not comfortable with cutting out in the middle of a hole there, then I'm going to show you other ways to attach it. So just hang on, okay? You know me, I like to not just show you one way to do it and do it my way. I like to show you different ways to give you guys choices. All right? So if you've never cut out a frame, you basically want to bend the center of your picture, cut a hole in there, and then get your scissor in there and work it around. Now once you have the picture down, you want to put 2 pieces of tape at the top where it's going to be hidden. Cover the frame over exactly centered where you want it, and then push down on the tape spots. And then you can flip it over and tape the bottom as well. Okay? And now for the next part is we're going to take the page that goes underneath it, which is the second page, and we're going to glue them wrong sides together to hide the back of our picture and to set up for the next page. Waiting for glue to dry. Then we want to make sure that we trim it if there's any overages, if we didn't line it up properly. And I'm also trimming down the tabs than my original big tab that I created because it's just too bulky to get folded in there. So I'm just making a tinier tab, as you can see I'm about to do here. It just helped a little bit better. When I was gluing the picture frame to the scrap that's behind it, I left open a tiny bit across from where the tab was. So if the tab is over on the right hand side, you want to leave the left hand side open a little bit so you can glue the next tab in between those 2 layers. So for the second picture on the back, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the picture out into the shape. This picture was way too wonky shaped for a perfect heart that matched the shape we were doing. So I used the template as a guide, and then I went ahead and I just freehand cut a heart out. I wanted it to be just me, Jim, and our new kitty we got back when we first met, when we first became a couple. Actually, it was quite a few months, but yeah, it was after we became a couple. So for this next one, I'm cutting out a heart template. But the original heart template was going to cut off too much picture. So I traced it, and then I went about another 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 of an inch wider than the heart that I drew. As you can see, I'm cutting very carefully there. And what I'm achieving by this is I'm creating the opening in the frame to be a little bit bigger, which is going to fit Jim and our little kitty. Okay? Not everybody knows we used to have a kitty. Our fur baby went to heaven. We got her about 3 months after we met, and we had her for 13 years. So she was my sweetheart, yeah. My little Lita. Okay, mommy moment over. So now you're going to repeat the same thing where you're going to glue it to the back of the next page. And then we're going to finally add the tabs. So I've taken the 2 pictures, folded the tab over, and I've glued the tab between the pages of the previous heart that we glued. And then you want to make sure you glue both sides of the tab into both sides of the picture so it doesn't open up on you or whatever. And then I added hot glue all along the edge to make sure I got a good seam. And now we're going to repeat the steps of attaching the frames. We're going to repeat that. But the one thing that's going to be different is the frames. So I think for the next one, I cut out a smaller heart, just using the original template. I took the original piece of paper that we cut, and I laid it over the picture, and I just used it to cut around to get a heart that is sort of the same size and shape as the first frame, but this one is glued on top. And then for the last one, did we do 5 already? Yeah, because it's a picture of Jim by himself. And for the last one, I'm going to do a square frame because nothing says it has to be all heart shapes. Not everybody's comfortable with cutting curves. A lot of people are only comfortable with cutting straight lines. So I've used my straight edge. I'm sorry, not using my straight edge. I'm using my cutting blade, my straight razor, and I'm cutting out a square picture frame, or rectangular technically. I'm making sure I cut out all of the extra pen mark as well. That's what I'm trimming around there to get nice sharp corners. And then I'm lining it up on the picture, and I'm doing the same technique where I'm putting 2 pieces of tape at the top that will be behind the humps of the heart, and then reframing it and sticking them down and then trimming to fit. And now I'm gluing the last picture backing to it. My last page, I actually have 2 extra hearts, is going to be just a letter to Jim. So the last 2 pages aren't going to have a picture on there. They're just going to be a letter to Jim. It's going to be plain. So when we're all done making all of our frames and gluing them to each other, we're going to go ahead and glue the last 2 tabs over the back or the bottom paper. Make sure your first tab is glued over your top page, and then we're going to glue both of them to the inside of the can. So once I have the accordion all set, you want to make sure that it actually works for you. Get all your tabs glued down. We're going to take the top and we're going to, first we're going to glue the bottom in. Oh, and once you glue the bottom in, and same thing with the top, go ahead and make sure you pull all the pictures out so you don't have any glue ooze that's going to accidentally glue pictures in along the way. And you want to repeat the same thing for the top. And now once I have the top and bottom glued in, I'm actually opening it up and leaving it opened up so all of the glue gets nice and cool and hardened and won't be tacky anymore and won't have the pictures sticking to each other. So now I'm just taking that little heart that we cut out of our original frame, and I'm using that to cut out pieces of paper because I'll know they'll be the right shape, just smaller. And I'm using these to create notes. Like I said, you can put a sentiment, you can put your memory of the occasion. You can write whatever you want. For the first picture, when you first open the box, it says, "This is us." And then for the first picture, when we got our kitty, I wrote "our family," and the rest of the things I'm going to leave private because this is actually Jim's Valentine's Day present. So I'm just going to keep the rest private for us, but really write whatever your heart speaks to you, really. Now I'm just taking one of those scrap pieces of paper. It actually came out of the last square frame, and I'm making a tag by making a rectangle shape and cutting off the 2 corners, and just going to create a gift tag. It says I would do it all over again. And I'm sorry it's a little difficult to do with one hand, but just to show you how it works, just like that. This last one is almost too impossible to do a DIY with, but I'm cutting a piece of foam board, roughly the size of the inside of the larger can. I'm peeling the paper off of one side of it and gluing down the other side. The reason I peeled off the paper is I'm going to stick these flower stems, the little tiny nubs that comes off the back of the flowers, jamming them into the foam. And I'm using that foam board foam as like floral foam. You can skip this step if you want to cut your little nubbins off. Sometimes when you cut the nubbins off though, the rose falls apart, so keep that in mind. But if you do end up not using the foam board and cutting off the nubbins, you probably could get the lid back on this box. But these are sort of floral boxes. I've seen them all over the internet. I just thought they were so pretty, and I was like, we can totally make one of those for way less than they want to charge. This project was less than $3 because I used a piece of foam board. Then I cut some of the flowers, the leaves, couldn't think of the word leaves, sorry, apart and stuck them randomly in just to make it look more like a purposeful little arrangement. And that's it. I hope you guys really enjoyed these tutorials. They're last minute Valentine's Day gifts. If you do, give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to share with friends and family, anybody you know might be interested in making either one of these or the photo album in a different shape for a different occasion. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe, and when you do, a little bell will pop up. When you ring that bell, YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. And as always, you guys take care. God bless. And we'll see you next time. Bye.